Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my second Midnight Tales video for you guys. And this was titled 6 Most Disturbing True Hitchhiking Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the room in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
A few years ago, I made a quick late-night stop at a Walmart on my way home after hanging out at a friend's place.
Okay.
It was just before 1 a.m., the kind of hour when the streets are quiet, and the only people out are shift workers or night owls. I'd lived around that area for years, and it always felt pretty safe, so I didn't think twice about popping in by myself, even as a woman in my early 20s. As soon as I stepped through the automatic doors, I locked eyes with this teenage girl sitting alone on the bench near the restrooms. She looked super anxious, like she was barely holding it together, clutching a backpack and a little purse while frantically checking her phone.
You know, I kind of feel the same way too when you walk into Walmart or any other store, like later in the evening, when there's hardly anybody in there. It feels less hectic and more calming just to roam freely around the store when during the day, light hours, it's busy. Sometimes the hours you want to go on are crowded. But anyway, I would be paying attention to this girl because if she's holding on to her belongings real tight and just looking at her phone, something's up. She's probably planning on calling somebody saying, I might have found somebody to pick me up. Better follow, or something like that. I don't know what's going to happen, so let's just continue on with the story, shall we?
For a second, she stared at me like she was trying to figure out if I was someone she could trust, then went right back to her phone, clearly trying to reach someone. Now, what caught my attention even more was the older guy sitting at the other end of the bench. He had white hair, jeans, and a plain t-shirt. Looked totally normal at first glance, like the kind of guy you'd see at a hardware store. But he never once looked up at me as I walked by. Instead, his eyes were fixed on that girl, not casually either. He was watching her in this intense, unsettling way, like he was sizing her up. And she was clearly uncomfortable, sitting on the very edge of the bench, body turned away from him, like she wanted to get as far as she could without physically standing up.
Okay, my mistake. She ain't planning on trying to lure her to get her a ride and then she calls somebody to stop him. She's just anxious because a guy is creeping her out. I will feel bad too and see if I can get a Walmart employee to do anything. But if they can't, go to that girl and be like, whisper in her ear, you need a ride out of here just to get away from that creep. If she says yes, all right, pay for your stuff in the Walmart and get out quick before this guy decides to make a move.
Something about that guy gave me this weird, crawling feeling in my gut. Normally, I'm the kind of person who takes my sweet time in stores, wandering the aisles for no reason. But that night, I grabbed what I needed fast, didn't even bother browsing, and the whole time I kept thinking about that man. I even moved the small knife I carry from my purse into the front pocket of my jeans, just in case. That's how uneasy he made me. When I went to check out, I took another glance over at the front bench. The guy had moved closer to the girl, trying to strike up conversation, and she looked like she was about to bolt. I could see her shaking her head, barely responding, clearly trying to keep him at bay without causing a scene. As I walked past them to leave, she suddenly called out to me and asked if I was heading anywhere near this town where I used to live. Turns out she'd come up with some friends for a quick trip, and while they stopped to grab snacks and use the restroom, she got separated from them. Then they left without her. Now, this store was a good 30 minutes away from the place she needed to get to, and the route back was mostly dark, empty highway, not somewhere you'd want to be walking alone at night, especially not a young girl. And the guy next to her, still staring, still not saying anything to me. Something inside me told me not to leave her there. Normally, I would have lied and said I was going the other way, but in that moment, I knew I couldn't do that. I told her I'd give her a ride. She seemed beyond relieved and tried to offer me gas money and a cigarette, both of which I turned down. I wasn't being reckless. I texted a few friends what I was doing and where I was going just in case. She was tiny, probably barely over 100 pounds and shorter than me, so I felt like if something went sideways, I could defend myself. When she gave me her address, I realized I actually knew the area. Quiet neighborhood, not far from where I used to play baseball and hang out at the community pool. On the drive, she told me she'd recently moved to the area with her mom and little sisters, and she'd gone out that night with some old friends. Her mom hadn't expected her back until the next day, so she hadn't answered any of the girls' calls, probably sleeping or at work. When we pulled up to her place, she thanked me over and over again, even shook my hand and asked if there was anything she could do for me. I just smiled and said, "Yeah, get yourself some better friends." Looking back, I still don't know exactly what that guy was planning, but something about him felt deeply wrong. At first, I thought maybe he was just waiting for someone in the restroom or loitering, but now that I think about it, there was no one else in the store, so who would he have been waiting for? When I got home, I woke up my mom and told her everything. She didn't love that I gave a stranger a ride, but she agreed. Something had told me to act, and maybe I really did help that girl avoid something awful.
Well, thank God you sprung into action and helped that lady out. Because if you didn't, she'd probably been terrorized by that creepy old dude and made a scene in Walmart. But that is good advice. Get better friends. Ones you know they're not going to bail on you in the last minute. Sorry that both of these ladies had to go through this traumatic experience, but glad they got out together. Didn't have to worry about that old man getting into a car and following them. That is really creepy.
So this one night I drove out to Lacey, Washington, because I was supposed to pick up a handgun I'd recently bought for self-defense. The store had told me online and through email that it was ready, but when I got there, surprise, surprise, they didn't actually have it in stock yet and told me to come back in a week. I was already annoyed, and to make things worse, I'd hit the beginning of rush hour traffic, so the idea of driving an hour back home through that sounded like a nightmare. I figured I'd just kill some time and wait it out instead of sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic for 2 hours. Also, side note, this wasn't even my own car. I was using my dad's since mine had kicked the bucket the year before. After aimlessly walking around the shop for a bit, I drove over to this cool, kind of modern cabin-style coffee spot nearby. Grabbed myself a dirty chai and decided to keep killing time. I cruised down the street and pulled into a gas station parking lot. Not to get gas, but just to hang out for a bit and wait for traffic to ease up.
First of all, I would be mad too if I try to order a gun or knife or some other self defense weapon, and when you go to the store, they say it's not in stock right now. I'd be like, well, come on, it said so on the computer. But instead of waiting in the store, I would do what this person's doing, just go to different shops and wait until time for them to have my specific item in stock. But let's just see what happens next, shall we?
I parked right at the corner near a four-way intersection, turned off the engine, and stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. Didn't want to stink up my dad's car. It was one of those chilly, drizzly autumn evenings, where it's not quite raining, but everything's damp, and the streetlights kind of glow through the mist. I was just standing there, zoning out, sipping my drink, watching the traffic lights blink through the haze, when I noticed this guy halfway across the street, walking straight toward me. I hadn't even seen him coming at first. He looked to be in his mid-20s, kind of scruffy with reddish blonde hair, and he had this old, worn-out backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked rough, clothes dirty, face tired, but not in an obviously threatening way. I figured he was probably homeless or dealing with something heavy, maybe drugs. He limped across the road slowly, like he was in pain, but his eyes never left me the entire time. I instinctively locked the car but stayed outside. I'm not the friendliest person, but I don't go out of my way to be rude either. So when he asked if I had a light, I gave a hesitant yeah and stepped forward to help. He held his cigarette out, and I lit it for him, keeping a little distance. Then he started chatting, something about just getting off the bus and needing to get somewhere close. The kind of vague story people sometimes use when they're working up to asking for something. The kind of vague story people sometimes use when they're working up to asking for something. Sure enough, he suddenly stopped mid-sentence and was like, "Oh, could you just give me a quick ride down the road? It's not far at all." I was already on edge, so I quickly made up a story about it being my dad's car and how I couldn't give rides without his permission. Thought it sounded believable enough. But this guy's whole demeanor shifted the second I said no. That forced little smile dropped off his face, and suddenly he was irritated, pushing harder. "Come on, it's literally just down the road," he said, whining and throwing in. "My leg is killing me. I'll even give you a cigarette." The desperation in his tone mixed with a weird kind of anger really started creeping me out. I stood firm, told him no again, and tried to be polite about it. Offered some suggestions like checking with someone at the gas station or calling a ride. But he wasn't having it. His fists started curling up, not like he was going to hit me, more like a little kid on the verge of throwing a tantrum. For a second, he just stared at me, like he was sizing me up, and I knew I wasn't about to stick around to find out what that meant. I told him to take care, quickly unlocked the car, jumped in, and locked the doors. When I looked back up, he was already walking away. But here's the kicker. He was moving fast, no limp at all. Just a totally normal, brisk walk, like the whole injured leg thing had never happened.
Yeah, that's how they get you right there. If they act like they got a bad leg, then they real bad. Some people would actually offer. But if they start getting aggressive because you wouldn't give them a ride, and when you get in your car and you take off and you see them walking normally, then it was just a whole scam to begin with. You never know what would have happened if he got inside your car. He probably would have ended up telling you to pull off somewhere and robbing you of your belongings and maybe your car too. Who knows? Thankfully, this person got out of there quick without that guy deciding to try to chase after her and break the window out of the car. But anyway, let's continue on to story number 3, shall we?
No signs of pain, no dragging his feet. Just a pissed off guy headed back in the direction he'd come from. That's when it really hit me that something was off. Honestly, I felt pretty stupid for hanging out in the city after dark alone like that, even if it was just to avoid traffic. At that point, I didn't care how bad the roads were. I fired up the engine and drove straight home. It ended up taking nearly 2 hours, but I didn't mind one bit. I was just glad to be away from whatever that guy was planning, and I knew deep down I'd dodged something really bad. This happened about 3 years ago when I still lived down in Orlando. My friend, let's call her V, and I got this spontaneous idea to take a little road trip up to Savannah, Georgia. We were both really into spooky history at the time, and figured it would be the perfect place to explore haunted spots without having to drive too far. We also had this random itch to go hiking while we were there, which didn't totally fit the haunted theme, but it made sense to us at the time. The whole trip was kind of a last-minute thing. We just packed up and went. The drive took longer than it should have, about 6 hours because we kept stopping. And when we finally got to our hotel, we realized we hadn't actually planned anything. Classic us. So we started Googling things to do and ended up booking a haunted house tour and a ghost walk for later that night. With a few hours to kill before those started, we decided to look for a nearby trail we could hike for a bit. After a quick search on Google Maps, we found a small trail just off this 2-lane road surrounded by trees, only a short drive away. We got there, and it looked fine. Nothing special. There was a little dirt parking lot and a sign with the trail info, and it said the whole loop was just about a mile long. Not exactly a full-on nature adventure, but we figured we were already there, so we might as well walk it. It started off super quiet, no one else around, and the trail itself was pretty straightforward and easy. About halfway through, we reached a side path that led out to a small baseball field, and beyond that we could see a few buildings, including what looked like a gas station in the distance. We didn't leave the trail, though, just glanced over and kept going until we reached the end. Then we turned around and started heading back the way we came. We were just chatting, not paying much attention, really, because we hadn't seen a single other person since we got there. That's when I noticed someone. He was maybe 100 feet behind us, walking in the same direction. I told V in a calm voice, "Hey, don't freak out, but there's someone behind us." Now V's known to be a little dramatic at times, which I say with love, so I was trying not to set her off. She still immediately turned her head, looked back and whispered, "What should we do?" I told her it was probably nothing and to just keep walking. But a minute later, I looked back again and saw that this guy was definitely getting closer, like he had sped up his pace to close the gap between us. That's when I started to feel uneasy, and I told V, "Okay, this is kind of weird." She got tense and kept asking what we should do, so I told her I had my heavy metal water bottle in my backpack and pulled it out.
First of all, that would be kind of cool just to walk on a trail and you see like a baseball field and a gas station on the side of you. But then when you're walking on a trail and somebody's just trailing you from behind and they don't seem like they're going to pass you or turn around and walk back, then yeah, that hefty metal water bottle will do the trick for sure if they decide to run up and grab you. But hopefully she don't have to use it.
Just in case. Now, to be fair, nothing had happened yet, but the fact that he hadn't said anything, just silently closing the distance, was enough to make both of us feel uneasy. We kept walking, and finally we could see the start of the trail up ahead. I think both of us started to relax a little, thinking we were almost back at the car and out of this weird situation. Right then, the guy finally spoke up. He was maybe 25 feet behind us and called out. I turned around and asked what was up, but didn't stop walking. He didn't say anything until he got a bit closer, which rubbed me the wrong way, so I made a point of letting him see the metal bottle in my hands. Just a little visual cue that we weren't about to be easy targets. He looked about our age, early 20s, and was shorter than me by at least half a foot. I'm 6'2", so it's not hard, but still. He had on a green varsity-style jacket that said Memphis across the back. He told us he'd just gotten into a car accident in the parking lot near the gas station, and his car was being towed, and then casually asked if we could give him a lift to his friend's house, supposedly just a few minutes up the road.
You know, that would be kind of weird because if your car broke down at the gas station and is being towed, I'm not surprised you didn't ask nobody there to give you a ride. So something is very fishy about this dude.
I looked at V and could see the panic in her eyes, and honestly, I wasn't feeling great about it either. Something about the whole thing just felt off. I told him we couldn't help, trying to keep my voice firm but not aggressive. He didn't argue, which was weirdly more unsettling than if he had. We all kind of kept chatting in that awkward small talk kind of way, trying to fill the silence. He asked where we were from, and before I could stop her, V blurted out the name of our city. He told us he was visiting from New York, and then added something like, "You gotta be careful these days. There's some strange people out there." And for some stupid reason, my brain short-circuited, and I replied, "And it's nice to meet you." He didn't laugh or respond, just dead silence. We finally reached the trailhead, and without saying another word, we speed-walked to our car, got in, locked the doors, and just sat there watching him as he walked off. Once he was far enough away, we both just looked at each other like, what the hell just happened? That's when V told me the part that freaked her out the most. She said she saw something in his hand, tucked behind his jacket, like he was hiding it. I hadn't even looked at his hands, which made me feel stupid, but she swore it looked like a knife. And now that I thought about it, the way he was wearing that jacket, just draped over his shoulders with his arms not in the sleeves, made it way easier to hide something. We kept going over everything. Why was he asking for a ride in the woods when the gas station was right there with people around?
Exactly. That was red flag number one for me right from the get go.
Why walk into a secluded area to look for help? Why not call his friend from the gas station if he really needed a ride? He said he was from New York but was wearing a Memphis jacket. Not a crime, but the whole thing just didn't add up.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that a crime or some sort of form of shame, but he might have went to college in Memphis. But that's kind of weird that he was asking for a ride from two girls in the middle of the woods instead of asking somebody at the gas station. And then her friend noticed that he had a knife. I figured if they said, yeah, they'll give him a ride, he'll probably turn the tables on them and pull that knife out and rob them and take their car. And it's kind of creepy that he gave him a warning saying that there's a bunch of creepy people out there. You always got to be careful who you talk to or pick up. They definitely took that advice and got out of there quick before they even got him in the car. But thankfully, they kind of talked small talk and got back to their vehicle and got out of there.
We even drove over to that gas station afterward, just to see if there were signs of a car accident or a tow truck. And of course, nothing. No broken glass, no tire marks, no police, no tow truck. Nothing. I still think about that day sometimes. Nothing happened, technically, but it just didn't sit right with me. The only reason I think things didn't go south is probably because he realized I was bigger than him and might have put up more of a fight than he was ready for. If V's right and he did have a knife, I'm just glad we didn't give him the chance to use it. I've definitely learned to trust my gut more when it comes to weird encounters in isolated places.
Yeah, I'll be trusting my gut too. If something as crazy as a person walking up in the middle of nowhere asking for a ride, but then if you notice they got something hiding behind their hands, if someone like that asks you for a ride, just try to make some small talk. Be like, "Oh, we can't go that direction. We're going a different route," or something, just to get him to walk away from you. But if you didn't see no signs of a messed up car or tow truck or even police, then automatically he did not arrive in the car. He walked there. That is just creepy. I'm just glad them girls got out of there safe and sound. Don't have to worry about this guy no more.
So, this weird experience happened to me about 5 years ago, and I swear I still think about it way more than I should. I was 21 at the time, going to this small college in southern Ohio, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. One of those schools that has like one decent coffee shop and a gym that always smells like wet socks. Most of my friends went to different colleges scattered around the Midwest, so during weekends I'd often hit the road to hang out with them. On this particular Friday, I was planning to drive a couple hours to visit my buddy Kyle for some classic college weekend fun. You know, too much pizza, too much beer, and not enough sleep. I'd done this drive so many times I didn't even need GPS anymore. I left campus around 6 p.m., but like 15 minutes in, my girlfriend called me out of nowhere, which was strange, because she knew I was driving. Turns out her car wouldn't start, and she needed a ride to work. She was working the night shift and figured since I wasn't too far, maybe I could swing by and save the day. Being the overly accommodating boyfriend I was back then, I agreed to turn around and get her. I pulled off the highway to check my GPS and saw there was an exit ahead that would get me to her faster than just backtracking. It led to one of those two-lane roads that cuts through a bunch of trees and old houses set way back behind the tree line. It was October, so the trees were showing off. Reds, oranges, golds. It was actually a pretty peaceful drive for a minute.
I'll say it would be. Something is mesmerizing about looking at different colored leaves. But you always got to stay focused if you're driving on the road. You don't want to be looking up at the leaves and lose control of your vehicle. And also, you got to pay attention to the signs because you don't want to keep on going and miss your turn.
Just trees, the occasional driveway, and barely another car in sight. About a mile down the road, I noticed a car pulled off to the shoulder with the hood popped open. and some guy in a button-up shirt and tie poking around under it. Now, I'm a cautious dude, but I've also been raised not to be a jerk, so I slowed down and asked if he needed help. He looked up and gave me a friendly smile. Totally normal-looking guy, not creepy or anything, and said his engine gave out on his way home from work. I offered him my phone in case he needed to call someone, but he said he had a car service. They just wouldn't be able to get to him until morning. Then he asked if I could give him a lift to his brother's place, supposedly just 4 minutes down the road. I should have said no right there, but I didn't. I guess I just got fooled by how average this guy seemed. Plus, I figured if anything went sideways, I had a solid 50 pounds and a few inches on him. So I let him in, and he directed me where to go. At first, it was fine. We made some small talk, but then things started to feel off. The first red flag was how weird he got about the music. I had some rap playing, nothing wild, but every time a curse word came on, he would visibly flinch like it was physically painful for him. I picked up on it and changed the song, trying to be polite. But a minute later, he slammed the power button and just shut the whole thing off without saying a word. I tried joking around like, not a fan of 50 Cent? But he just sat there in silence, staring out the window. Now I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. I asked him how much farther it was, trying to move things along. He goes, about 4 more minutes, which made my stomach twist a bit. That's what he said 10 minutes ago. So I told him this was as far as I could take him, and he'd have to walk the rest of the way. That's when things got weird fast. Instead of getting mad, which I honestly expected, he got all panicked, practically begging me to just take him a little farther. I told him again I wasn't going any further. Then he pulled out this fat wallet, stuffed with cash, and tried to bribe me. Said he'd pay me for the ride. That was enough for me, but what happened next still messes with me. As he fumbled with his money, something slipped out of his wallet and landed on the seat between us. He grabbed it fast, but not before I saw it. It was a tiny Ziploc bag filled with what I swear were teeth. Human teeth, molars, canines, a whole collection.
Oh my lord, did you just pick up a serial killer? Because why would he have human teeth in a Ziploc bag? Unless he was keeping them for trophies. Ugh. Yeah, at that point, I'm pulling over and telling him, get out now before I get the cops involved.
I froze for a second, then absolutely lost it. I yelled at him to get out of my car, and to my surprise, he didn't argue. He just looked at me, wide-eyed, then stepped out. I peeled out of there and called the cops as soon as I had service. They basically shrugged it off, told me to avoid picking up hitchhikers, that unless he committed a crime, there wasn't much they could do. To this day, I have no clue what that guy's deal was, or why he had a bag of teeth, but I do know this. His smile looked totally normal, like all of his teeth were still right there in his mouth. I don't even want to imagine where those others came from.
Like I said earlier, he probably killed somebody and ripped their teeth out. But I cannot believe that when he called the cops, they said there's nothing they could do about it unless he committed an actual crime. Are you kidding me? He's got teeth in his wallet. That should be taken seriously enough for you guys to go out into that road and find him and arrest him so he wouldn't trick another driver to pick him up. Cops always tell you, look out for hitchhikers because you never know what they're doing drugs or they might be potential murderers. If they give off those warning signs, don't pick them up.
This happened years ago when my son was still a baby. Back then, my mother-in-law used to help us out by watching him while my partner and I worked. Since I had to be at my job by 6 in the morning, I'd always be up super early, like around 5, bundling my little guy into the car and heading over to her place to drop him off. Her house was just a couple minutes away, maybe a mile and a half tops, and it was all main roads, so the trip was usually uneventful. This one day, though? Yeah, this day was anything but. It was a chilly October morning, still mostly dark out with that weird twilight glow that happens right before sunrise. I was driving south down the main stretch I always took. and as I got near this bend in the road, I noticed an old beat up black car on the opposite side, parked kind of awkwardly. It wasn't blocking traffic or anything, but it wasn't exactly pulled off the road either. It just looked off. I remember thinking it looked like it had broken down, and I kind of mentally noted it, but didn't think too hard on it. I dropped my baby off like usual, chatted for a second with my MIL, and then turned around to head back north on the same road to get to work. So as I'm driving back, I see that same black car, but now it's on my side of the road. And this time, there's a man standing next to it. He's wearing a white dress shirt, slacks, and holding his arms up. One hand had a set of keys. The other had what looked like a wallet. He looked like some guy on his way to work who just had the worst morning ever. And being the overly helpful person I was back then, I slowed down. I didn't even think about how sketchy it was. I just felt bad for him. Not everyone had cell phones back then, and I figured I'd want someone to stop for me if I were in his shoes. As I pulled up next to him, he lit up like I was his savior or something. He leaned down and said, "You are literally an answer to my prayers. Any chance you can take me just up the road? It's not far." I asked if it was his car that broke down, and he kind of smiled and said, "Oh, that's not even my car." And in my half-awake, not yet caffeinated brain, I convinced myself maybe it was his wife's car or his friend's or something, and he was just being sarcastic. So, I told him to hop in. He got in, buckled up, which, weirdly enough, I still remember because I was super strict about seatbelts from always strapping in the baby, and off we went. I tried to make small talk, just being friendly, and asked where exactly I should drop him off. That's when things got weird. Fast. Without missing a beat, this guy leans in a bit and says, "So, want to guess how many felonies I have?" Just like that.
Oh, heck no. That was kind of sketchy for him to say, oh, that's not even my car to begin with. So this guy probably stole the car and it broke down and he was trying to get a ride away from it. Because if the cops found it, they would find him and arrest him. But you should not even said that because automatically I would want him out of the vehicle ASAP.
I laughed a little nervously, hoping he was joking, but he wasn't laughing. At all. I glanced over at him, and he had this cold stare, like completely dead-eyed, with this tiny smirk that made my skin crawl. My whole body tensed up immediately. I was mentally going through every self-defense trick I'd ever read, but none of that felt useful when you're trapped in a moving car with someone you just picked up off the side of the road. Then he goes, "Why'd you think that car was mine? I can't even legally have a license, you dizzy little girl." And he just laughed. This horrible, mocking laugh that I still hear in my nightmares sometimes. Something in me just snapped. I slammed on the brakes so hard the tires screeched. Thank God there wasn't anyone behind me, because I wanted nothing more than for someone to crash into me just to get the cops involved. Without thinking, I screamed, "Get the fuck out of my car or I'll stab you." I didn't have anything to stab him with, obviously. But I must have looked unhinged because the guy didn't argue. He just unbuckled and bolted. I hit the gas and drove like a bat out of hell to work. When I got there, I could barely speak. I was shaking and crying and just ruined for the whole day. My coworkers were horrified when I told them. Later that day, I had to go pick up my son, and curiosity got the best of me. I took the same road and yep, same creepy car, still parked in that same weird spot. I pulled into a gas station I hadn't noticed that morning. It was still dark then, and asked the cashier if she knew who owned the car. She said it had been sitting there since the day before. Apparently, it had a white rag on the mirror at one point, which people in my area use to signal a car is broken down and not abandoned. But the rag was gone now. I couldn't even bring myself to tell her what had happened. I just grabbed my son, went home, and swore off that road for a long time after.
Man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. But yeah, I'll be salted too if the guy just turned with a cold stare saying, this ain't a funny matter. at that point, I'd be like, get out of the car now. Because you never know, that guy probably would have robbed her or worse, did something horrible to that lady and took her car. Then she would never be the same again. Thankfully, she just came up with that lie saying, you better get out or I'll stab you. Even though she didn't have nothing to stab him with. And he got out and she was able to get to work. But I thought that guy stole that car that she was talking about, but turned out, nope, he was just using that as a front just to get somebody to pick him up. What a huge psycho jerk he is, taking advantage of helpless ladies just to pick you up.
So this happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago, back when I was really into hitting the gym late at night. I liked going when it was practically empty, like 2 or 3 in the morning, because I could actually use the machines I wanted without having to wait around. That night was no different. I had just finished up a solid workout and was walking out to my car, already mentally planning out what leftovers I was going to microwave when I got home. That's when this guy walks up to me in the parking lot. He didn't look sketchy or anything, just your average dude, and he tells me his car broke down. He says he's waiting on a tow truck, but needs a lift to a gas station a few miles away. Without even thinking, I said sure and unlocked my car. I figured it wasn't a big deal, and honestly, I was feeling pretty good after the gym, so I was in a generous mood. As we're driving, he starts giving me directions, and right away, I get this weird vibe from the way he talks. Like, he says his name multiple times, and I'm terrible with names, so I barely register it the first time. But then he repeats his full name over and over, like he wants it to stick in my head. I kind of laugh it off, chalking it up to him being quirky or maybe nervous, and I keep the small talk going just to make it less awkward. At one point, he asks how I'm feeling and what I think about the city, so I ramble a bit about my workout and how I like the skyline at night. He agrees way too eagerly, like he's trying to say the right thing, and mentions how nice it is that no one's really out at this time. That should have been a red flag in hindsight, but I was too focused on not hitting a raccoon or something on this dark back road he directed me onto. There were better lit, more direct routes to the gas station, but he specifically had me take the long, unlit way. Eventually, we get there, and as soon as I pull into the gas station lot, his whole energy changes. It's like he deflates. He just mumbles a thanks, gets out, and doesn't even walk inside. He just stands there outside, not making a call or moving toward the pumps. Now here's the part that bugs me the most, looking back. First off, the gym I went to, it was literally up a hill from a 24-hour gas station. You could see it from the gym parking lot. So if his car really did break down, why the hell wouldn't he just wait there instead of hanging around outside a gym he clearly wasn't a member of? Not only that, but he mentioned what kind of car he had, and it was some fancy brand, which made no sense because if you're driving an expensive car and waiting for a tow, wouldn't you just stay with the car and ride with the tow driver? The more I think about it, the more it creeps me out, especially the whole name thing, like he wanted to make sure I remembered him or could identify him somehow. It felt like he expected me to recognize it, but I didn't. Still don't. And I'll never forget how unsettling that ride felt afterward. At the time, I just thought I was doing a nice thing for someone who needed help. But now, being a little older and a lot more cautious, I realize how dumb that decision was. For anyone wondering, this happened in central Pennsylvania. And yeah, I was about 20 or 21 at the time, and female. It was a weird, uncomfortable experience that easily could have gone sideways if things had played out even a little differently.
Okay, that guy was really stupid just saying his name multiple times to this girl. Because if he'd done something to her, like robbed her of her belongings in the car, then when she goes to the authorities, she will say that guy and tell him what he looks like. Boom, got him. But I figured he was probably either high on drugs or he's paranoid. But Now she knows not to pick up those type of people anymore. And she did not have to worry about her getting hurt by him. But that is really disturbing. Always check on what type of people you pick up because you never know if they're really messed up in the head. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Tales reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Court channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.